The moment their eyes met across the mud-splattered restaurant, something shifted in the universe. He was a man who had everything money could buy but nothing his heart truly wanted. She was a woman who had lost everything except her spirit. Their unlikely love story would change both their lives forever, but not before testing every limit they thought they had. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected love and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us all that sometimes life's messiest moments lead to our greatest blessings. Jackson Reed checked his Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes. 7:30 on the dot. He'd arrived 15 minutes early, as was his habit for everything, business meetings, school pickups, and apparently, blind dates he'd been reluctantly talked into by his well-meaning sister. The maitre d' at Bellini's, Chicago's most exclusive Italian restaurant, hovered nearby with the appropriate deference due to one of their most valued patrons. Jackson had reserved his usual corner table, the one that afforded both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. Not that he expected much from tonight. At 38, with a 10-year-old daughter and a tech empire that demanded his constant attention, dating had become an exercise in disappointment. "Another Macallan, Mr. Reed?" the waiter asked. "No, thank you. I'm waiting for someone." Though for how much longer, he wasn't certain. Jackson had rules about punctuality. In business and in life, he believed it showed respect for other people's time. His date was now officially late. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter's nanny. "Emma finished her science project. She wants to know if you'll be home to see it before bedtime." A pang of guilt hit him. He should be home with Emma, not sitting in a restaurant waiting for a stranger who couldn't be bothered to arrive on time. Since losing his wife to cancer 5 years ago, every moment away from their daughter felt like a betrayal of his promise to be both parents to her. Just as Jackson was reaching for his wallet, prepared to leave a generous tip for the inconvenience, the restaurant's heavy glass door swung open. The woman who entered looked nothing like the polished professional his sister had described. Her dark hair was plastered to her face in wet tendrils. Her blue dress, what he could see of it beneath a layer of mud, clung to her slender frame. One heel was broken, forcing her to walk with an awkward limp. But most striking was the mud. It covered her from her knees down, with splashes reaching all the way to her shoulders. The maitre d' moved quickly to intercept her, his expression horrified at the trail of dirty water she was leaving on the marble floor. Jackson stood, ready to make a discreet exit. This was clearly not going to work. He had standards, expectations. His life was ordered, controlled. This woman, whoever she was, represented everything he'd worked to eliminate from his existence: chaos, unpredictability, mess. Then she looked up. Her eyes found his across the room, deep brown eyes that somehow managed to sparkle with both embarrassment and defiance. And she smiled. Not an apologetic smile, but one that acknowledged the absurdity of the situation and invited him to share in the joke. Something about that smile stopped him cold. "I'm so sorry," she called across the restaurant, her voice carrying a musical quality that turned heads. "You must be Jackson." "I'm Charlotte. I'd shake your hand, but—" She gestured to her mud-covered self with a laugh that seemed to brighten the entire room. Against every instinct, Jackson found himself walking toward her. Charlotte Bennett was having the worst day of her life, or at least, that's what she'd thought until she saw him. Tall, impeccably dressed in what was clearly a custom suit, with salt and pepper hair that somehow made him look distinguished rather than old. His expression as he approached was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, curiosity, perhaps, that gave her hope this disaster might not be a total loss. "I can explain," she said quickly. "There was a little girl. Her puppy ran into the park pond chasing ducks. She was crying on the shore, afraid to go in. I didn't think, I just kicked off my shoes and went after the dog." Charlotte shrugged. "The pond was muddier than I expected. And deeper." Jackson's expression remained neutral. "And the puppy? Safe and sound?" Though I can't say the same for this dress. She attempted to brush some dried mud from her sleeve, succeeding only in creating a small dust cloud. The maitre d' cleared his throat pointedly. Perhaps Madame would prefer to reschedule? Before Charlotte could respond, Jackson surprised her, and himself, by saying, "That won't be necessary. We'll take my table." He turned to Charlotte. "Unless you'd prefer to change first." She hesitated. "I don't have anything to change into. My apartment is across town, and I came straight here because I was already running late." She bit her lip. "I understand if you want to raincheck. I wouldn't blame you." Jackson studied her for a long moment. 5 years of carefully structured existence, of business decisions based on logic rather than emotion, of keeping the world at arm's length to protect what remained of his heart, all of it seemed to fade as he looked at this mud-covered woman who had jumped into a pond to save a stranger's dog. "I know a place nearby that might have something suitable," he said finally. "If you're willing to trust me." Charlotte's smile returned, brighter than before. "Well, I'm already covered in mud in front of Chicago's elite. How much worse could it get?" 30 minutes later, Charlotte emerged from the boutique wearing a simple but elegant emerald green dress that the owner, a longtime client of Jackson's, had been delighted to provide after hours. Her hair was still damp but now neatly combed, and she'd managed to salvage her makeup with supplies from her purse. "Better?" she asked, giving a small twirl on the sidewalk. Jackson found himself smiling, really smiling, for what felt like the first time in years. "Much. Though I was getting used to the mud monster look. It's my go-to first date strategy," she quipped. "Set the bar so low that anything afterward seems impressive by comparison." "Clever," he said, offering his arm. "Are you hungry? Bellini's is still holding our table, but we could go somewhere more casual if you prefer." Charlotte slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow, surprised by how natural it felt. "After the day I've had? I'm starving. And I never turn down good Italian food." As they walked back toward the restaurant, Jackson found himself curious about this woman in a way he hadn't been about anyone in a long time. "So what do you do, Charlotte, when you're not diving into ponds to rescue puppies?" "I'm a children's book illustrator," she replied. "Not nearly as glamorous or lucrative as whatever you do, but I love it." "My sister didn't tell you about me?" Charlotte shook her head. "Only that you were successful and too serious for your own good." "Oh, and that you have a daughter." "Emma," Jackson said, his voice softening. "She's 10 going on 30. Smart as a whip and not afraid to let me know it." "She sounds wonderful." "She is." He hesitated. "Her mother died 5 years ago. Cancer." Charlotte's hand tightened slightly on his arm. "I'm so sorry, Jackson." "Thank you." He was surprised by how easily the words came. Usually, mentioning Lisa's death to new acquaintances created an awkward silence he had to fill with reassurances that he was fine, that they were managing. But Charlotte's simple acknowledgement required nothing more. "My parents died in a car accident when I was in college," she offered quietly. "Different circumstances, but I understand loss." Jackson nodded, grateful for her understanding without the usual platitudes. As they approached the restaurant, he found himself genuinely looking forward to dinner, a sensation he hadn't experienced in longer than he cared to admit. Dinner was a revelation. Charlotte ate with unabashed enjoyment, closing her eyes in pleasure at the first bite of her pasta, asking intelligent questions about the wine Jackson selected, and somehow managing to get him talking about everything from his company's latest project to Emma's obsession with marine biology. "So you built your company from scratch?" she asked, twirling linguine around her fork. Jackson nodded. "Reed Tech started in my garage 15 years ago. Now we employ over 500 people." "That's incredible," Charlotte said, and he could tell she meant it. "What does the company do exactly?" Your sister was vague on details. "We develop security software, primarily for financial institutions." Not very exciting dinner conversation. I disagree. Creating something from nothing is always interesting. She leaned forward. What made you decide to start your own business? Jackson found himself telling her about his early fascination with computers, his frustration working for others, and the leap of faith he'd taken when Lisa was pregnant with Emma. It was terrifying, he admitted. Walking away from a stable job with a baby on the way. Lisa never doubted me, though. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. Jackson was surprised to find he could talk about Lisa without the usual crushing weight of grief. What about you? How did you become an illustrator? Charlotte's eyes lit up. I've been drawing since I could hold a crayon. My parents were both teachers, they encouraged creativity. After they died, I almost gave it up. Practical considerations and all that. But then I realized life's too short not to do what you love. That's brave, Jackson said, meaning it. She laughed. Or foolish. The first few years were pretty lean. Lots of ramen noodles and roommates. And now? Now I have a small studio apartment all to myself, and I can afford name-brand cereal, she said with a grin. Living the dream. Jackson found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in what felt like forever. What's your favorite project you've worked on? As Charlotte described a series about a time-traveling cat that had become unexpectedly popular, Jackson realized he was completely engaged in the conversation. There was no checking his watch, no mental review of tomorrow's meetings, no subtle glances at his phone. For the first time in years, he was fully present in the moment. After dinner, neither wanted the evening to end. They walked along the Chicago riverfront, the city lights reflecting on the water. Tell me about Emma, Charlotte said. What's she like? Jackson's face softened. She's extraordinary. Brilliant, stubborn, compassionate. She's had to grow up faster than I would have wished, but she still has this capacity for joy that amazes me. She sounds like her father, Charlotte said quietly. Jackson looked at her in surprise. I'm not sure anyone would describe me as joyful. Maybe not on the surface, she conceded. But it's there. I can see it when you talk about your daughter, your company. The things you care about. They stopped walking, facing each other. Jackson studied her face in the glow of the streetlights. You're very perceptive. Occupational hazard, she replied with a small smile. Illustrators have to be good observers. And what do you observe about me? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Charlotte considered him thoughtfully. I see someone who's built walls to protect himself and his daughter. Someone who's created a carefully controlled life because the alternative is too frightening to contemplate. She paused. Someone who might be ready for a little chaos. Jackson felt exposed, as if she'd somehow seen past all his defenses with just a few hours of conversation. Chaos like jumping into ponds to save puppies? Exactly like that, she said, her eyes twinkling. Sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them. As if to prove her point, the skies opened up, and rain began to pour down on them. Charlotte laughed, tilting her face up to the rain. See? Chaos. Jackson should have been annoyed, his custom suit was getting soaked, his carefully styled hair plastered to his forehead. Instead, he found himself laughing alongside her, feeling lighter than he had in years. My place is just a few blocks away, he said impulsively. We could wait out the rain. I make a decent cup of coffee. Charlotte hesitated. What about Emma? She's with her nanny until 10. I promised to be home to see her science project before bed. Charlotte smiled. I'd love to see your home. And hear about this science project. Jackson's penthouse apartment was exactly as Charlotte had imagined, sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city. But there were touches that softened the space, Emma's artwork framed on the walls, family photos on shelves, a collection of well-worn children's books on the coffee table. "It's beautiful," she said, accepting the towel he offered to dry her hair. "It's home," he replied simply. "Coffee? Please." As Jackson moved to the kitchen, Charlotte wandered to the windows, taking in the rain-washed city below. "This view must be amazing in the morning." "It is," he agreed, measuring coffee beans into a grinder. "Emma and I have breakfast out on the terrace when the weather's nice. It's our special time together." Charlotte turned to watch him, struck by the domesticity of the moment. This powerful, wealthy man making coffee in his kitchen, talking about breakfast with his daughter. "You're a good father, Jackson." He looked up, surprised. "I try to be. It's not always easy, doing it alone." "The best things rarely are," she said softly. The coffee machine hummed to life. Jackson leaned against the counter, studying her. "Can I ask you something personal? After I showed up to our date covered in mud? I think we're past formalities." He smiled. "Fair point. I was wondering, why did you agree to this blind date? You're beautiful, intelligent, clearly capable of rescuing both puppies and awkward social situations. You can't be short on options." Charlotte considered the question. "Honestly? I've been focused on my career for so long that dating fell by the wayside. My friend, your sister, has been trying to set me up for months. I finally said yes because..." She paused, searching for the right words. "Because I realized I was hiding behind my work, using it as an excuse not to take chances. Not to risk getting hurt." "I understand that better than you might think," Jackson admitted, pouring the coffee into mugs. "Risk assessment is literally part of my business. Personal risks are harder to quantify." Charlotte accepted the mug he offered, their fingers brushing. "And yet here we are." "Here we are," he echoed, his eyes holding hers. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then Jackson's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled apologetically. "Emma. She wants to know if I'm coming home soon." "You should go," Charlotte said. "Don't keep her waiting." Jackson hesitated. Would you like to meet her?" The question hung in the air, its significance clear to both of them. This wasn't just about extending their evening, it was Jackson opening a door to the most important part of his life. Charlotte set down her coffee cup. "Are you sure? That's a big step." "I'm not sure of anything," he admitted with a rueful smile. "Except that I don't want this night to end yet." Emma Reed was not what Charlotte had expected. Somehow, she'd imagined a miniature version of Jackson, reserved, watchful, carefully controlled. Instead, she found herself face to face with a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, with wild curly hair and her father's penetrating gaze. "You're the mud lady," Emma exclaimed the moment Charlotte walked through the door. "Mrs. Winters told me Dad was on a date with a lady who jumped in a pond to save a puppy." Charlotte shot an amused glance at Jackson, who shrugged helplessly. "News travels fast," he said. "I am indeed the mud lady," Charlotte confirmed solemnly. "Though I've cleaned up since then." Emma studied her critically. "Dad never brings people home. You must be special." "Emma," Jackson warned, but Charlotte just laughed. "I don't know about special," she said. "But I heard you have a science project to show off, and I'd love to see it." That was all the invitation Emma needed. She grabbed Charlotte's hand and pulled her toward the dining room table, which was covered with what appeared to be a miniature ecosystem. "It's a marine biome," Emma explained excitedly. "I'm showing how pollution affects coral reefs. See, this side is healthy, and this side shows what happens when there's too much plastic and chemicals." Charlotte leaned in, genuinely impressed by the detail and thought that had gone into the project. "This is incredible, Emma. The colors you've used for the coral are perfect. I can really see the difference between the healthy and damaged sections." Emma beamed. Dad helped with the structure, but I did all the research and painting myself. She's been working on it for weeks, Jackson added, watching the two of them with an expression Charlotte couldn't quite read. It shows, Charlotte said sincerely. You have a real eye for detail, Emma. Dad says I get that from my mom, Emma replied, her voice softening slightly. She was a marine biologist. That explains your interest in ocean life, Charlotte said gently. Emma nodded. I want to be a marine biologist too. Or maybe an artist. Or both. She looked at Charlotte curiously. Dad says you draw books. I illustrate children's books, yes. Emma's eyes widened. Like, real books? In stores and everything? Charlotte laughed. Real books in real stores. I could show you some of my work sometime, if you'd like. Could you show me how to draw better, Coral? Mine looks okay, but not as real as I want it to. Jackson started to intervene. Emma, Charlotte didn't come here to. I'd love to, Charlotte interrupted. In fact. She glanced at Jackson. Do you have any colored pencils or markers? 10 minutes later, the three of them were seated at the dining room table, Charlotte demonstrating techniques for creating more realistic coral textures. Emma proved to be a quick study, her small face intense with concentration as she mimicked Charlotte's strokes. Jackson watched them, a strange feeling expanding in his chest. It had been just him and Emma for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to share these moments with someone else. To see his daughter connect with another adult who treated her intelligence and passion with respect rather than condescension. Dad, look! Emma held up her drawing proudly. Charlotte showed me how to make it look like it's moving in the water. It's beautiful, sweetheart, he said, meaning it. Then, to Charlotte, you're very good with her. Charlotte smiled. She makes it easy. She's remarkable, Jackson. Like I said, she takes after her mother, he replied automatically. Emma rolled her eyes. Dad always says that when I do something good. Charlotte glanced between them. I think you're probably like both your parents, Emma. And that's a wonderful thing. The little girl considered this, then nodded. I guess that's okay. She yawned suddenly, unable to hide her tiredness despite her obvious desire to keep Charlotte there. Bedtime, kiddo, Jackson said gently. School tomorrow. Emma sighed dramatically but didn't argue. Will you come back, Charlotte? To see my project when it's all finished? Charlotte felt Jackson's eyes on her. If your dad doesn't mind, I'd love to. Dad doesn't mind, Emma answered confidently. She hugged Charlotte impulsively. Thanks for helping with my coral. And for saving that puppy. After Emma had gone to bed, with promises extracted from both adults that Charlotte would indeed return, they stood together in Jackson's living room, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. She's amazing, Charlotte said softly. She liked you, Jackson replied. That doesn't happen often. No? He shook his head. Emma's protective of our little unit. She's polite to the women I've dated, but never engaged. Not like tonight. Charlotte felt a flutter of something warm in her chest. I'm honored. I should be the one saying that, Jackson said, taking a step closer to her. Charlotte, I don't do this. Impulsive decisions, bringing strangers home to meet my daughter, it's not me. And yet, here we are, she echoed his earlier words. Here we are, he agreed, his voice low. Covered in mud, metaphorically speaking, in my case. Charlotte laughed softly. Life's messy, Jackson. Sometimes we have to jump into the pond. Is that your philosophy? Jump first, think later? Not always, she admitted. But sometimes the most beautiful things happen when we let go of control. When we embrace the chaos. Jackson reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm beginning to see that. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been before. Like finding something she hadn't known she was missing. 6 months later, Charlotte stood on the shore of a small lake, watching Jackson teach Emma how to cast a fishing line. The summer sun glinted off the water, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. So much had changed since that rainy night in Chicago. Weekend visits had turned into regular family dinners. Emma's science project had won first prize, with Charlotte cheering as loudly as Jackson at the school fair. Charlotte's tiny apartment had gradually accumulated Jackson's things, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, his favorite coffee mug. And 3 weeks ago, Jackson had asked her to move in with them. "Charlotte. Look!" Emma called excitedly as her line tugged. "I think I got one." Charlotte hurried over as Jackson helped his daughter reel in her first fish, a modest-sized bass that had Emma beaming with pride. "Great job, Emma," Charlotte praised, snapping a photo with her phone. After they released the fish back into the lake, catch and release is better for the ecosystem, Dad, Emma ran off to explore the shoreline, leaving Jackson and Charlotte alone by the water. "Happy?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. Charlotte leaned into him, watching Emma examine rocks along the shore. "Incredibly. You? More than I thought possible." He turned to face her. "I have something for you." From his pocket, he pulled a small, mud-colored box. Charlotte's breath caught. "I had it made specially," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring with a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. "The same color as the dress you wore the night we met. After you were covered in mud." Charlotte laughed through sudden tears. "You're never going to let me forget that, are you?" "Never," he promised, his eyes serious despite his smile. "Charlotte Bennett, you crashed into my carefully ordered life and turned everything upside down. You taught me that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the messiest beginnings." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me? Be Emma's mother? Continue bringing chaos and joy into our lives?" "Yes," she whispered. "To all of it. Yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma came running back, having spotted the moment from afar. "Did you ask her? Did she say yes?" Jackson laughed, lifting his daughter into his arms. "She said yes, kiddo." Emma threw her arms around both of them. "Finally. I've been waiting forever." Over Emma's head, Charlotte's eyes met Jackson's, both of them thinking the same thing. Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most beautiful journeys. Sometimes a woman covered in mud was exactly what a man needed to remember how to live again. And sometimes, the family you build is even more precious than the one you're born into. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that celebrates love in all its messy, beautiful forms. Remember, sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as our biggest disasters. You just have to be brave enough to see past the mud to the person underneath.